Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
Today we're sharing 5 stories. First, we're diving into the new Safety as a Service gold rush, a market set to hit nearly $7 billion. We'll explore how age-guessing AI is being used, thanks to laws like the UK's Online Safety Act, and why it threatens online anonymity. Next, the EU is hitting Google with a surprisingly modest fine after a 4-year Adtech probe. We'll look at how a new antitrust chief is rewriting the playbook and why a breakup order is now completely off the table. Then, a jury ordered Tesla to pay $242.5 million in a fatal Autopilot crash case. Now, Tesla is fighting to slash that by 90%, creating what experts call a moral crumple zone, where the driver takes all the blame. After that, we'll see why AI chipmaker Marvell Technologies stock plummeted 18% right after announcing a record 58% revenue explosion. And finally, the SEC is suing Elon Musk for $150 million, alleging he saved that much by waiting too long to disclose his massive Twitter stake. Musk, however, is firing back, calling it selective enforcement. Tech companies are facing a new ultimatum: protect kids online or risk a fine that could cripple them. We're talking as high as 10% of their global annual revenue. This isn't a future threat. It's happening now. New legislation like the UK's Online Safety Act is forcing a massive rethink, and some of the biggest names are already reacting. Spotify, Reddit, and X have all implemented new age assurance systems. Even Pornhub is now blocking all users who don't go through an age verification process. What's happening is a fundamental re-architecting of the internet in real time. This patchwork of national laws is creating what some call a geopolitical splintering of the web. Think about it. A platform like Wikipedia is now facing legal challenges in the UK because it refuses to implement age verification, arguing it would destroy its open, anonymous editing model. The result is an internet where your experience and your access to information are increasingly dictated by your physical location. So who's behind this tech revolution? At the heart of many of these new systems is one company you've likely never heard of, Yoti. Its artificial intelligence captures a selfie and estimates a person's age, claiming it can get within 2 years of accuracy for people aged 13 to 24. But let's dig into that accuracy claim, because it's not as simple as it sounds. Research shows Yoti's tech is impressively accurate for teenagers, with a mean error of just 1.1 years. It's crucial to understand, though, that these systems can have hidden biases. Landmark research from MIT has shown that some of the world's leading facial recognition systems had error rates of less than 1% for light-skinned men, but those errors skyrocketed to nearly 35% for dark-skinned women. The stakes are high. If the AI is less accurate for certain groups, it could wrongly lock them out of services, or worse, fail to protect a child. The technology is powerful, but it's not perfect. This has kicked off what one law partner calls a race on for child safety technology, with providers scrambling to make their mark. It's a brand new marketplace and everyone wants a piece. And when we say everyone wants a piece, we're talking about a massive financial boom. This is the birth of what experts call the Safety as a Service economy. Market projections estimate the age verification market will explode from just under $2 billion today to nearly $7 billion by 2033. It's a gold rush, and it's creating a new class of powerful, centralized gatekeepers for our digital lives. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. This isn't just software anymore. Finnish phone maker HMD Global just launched a new smartphone that uses AI from a firm called SafeToNet to stop kids from filming or even viewing explicit images right on the device itself. This brings us to a fundamental choice about trust and privacy. Yoti's model is cloud-based, meaning your selfie is sent to their servers for analysis. The on-device model, like on the HMD phone, keeps all your data local. It never leaves your phone. The trade-off is this. On-device AI is faster and inherently more private, but it's limited by the phone's processing power. Cloud AI is more powerful and can run more complex analyses, but it means you have to trust a company with your sensitive data. While the goal is safety, this rise of digital ID tech is sparking a huge new debate about user privacy, and the implications go far beyond just protecting kids. Critics from groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation warn that mandatory age verification could inadvertently destroy online anonymity for everyone. This could create a chilling effect on free speech as people become hesitant to discuss sensitive topics. Even more worrying, it could push vulnerable users who rely on anonymity toward unmonitored, encrypted platforms to hide, potentially making them even less safe. This all begs the question, why the sudden massive shift? A policy manager at the British child protection charity NSPCC puts it bluntly, stating, "For years, tech giants have stood by while harmful and illegal content spread across their platforms, leaving young people exposed and vulnerable. That era of neglect must end." Speaking of powerful regulators forcing tech's hand, let's turn to the European Union. Get this. Google, a company that pulled in over $264 billion in advertising revenue last year, is about to get what sources are calling a modest fine from its biggest and toughest regulator. And for a company of that size, you know, many experts argue that even billion-dollar fines aren't a deterrent. They just become an expected operational cost, like a tax for maintaining market dominance. After all, despite collecting over $30 billion in antitrust fines globally since 2015, big tech's behavior hasn't fundamentally changed, which is a huge part of this story. For years, the EU has been the undisputed heavyweight champion of big tech fines. They hit Google with a record €4.3 billion penalty over its Android system, then a €2.42 billion fine for its shopping service, and another $1.49 billion for the AdSense platform. What often gets lost in the headlines, though, is that these massive fines frequently led to years of legal appeals, and according to a report from the European Court of Auditors, the investigations themselves were often too slow to keep up with the fast-moving tech market. The fines made for great headlines, but they didn't always fix the underlying problem. But this time, after a 4-year investigation into its Adtech empire, the penalty is expected to be a fraction of that. So what changed? A new EU antitrust chief, Teresa Ribera, is in charge, and she's rewriting the playbook. Insiders say her focus isn't on hefty deterrence, but on simply getting companies to end anti-competitive practices. This is what some are calling the Ribera doctrine. The strategy is shifting from reactive punishment to proactive regulation. Instead of just fining companies after the fact, the EU is now using its new Digital Markets Act, or DMA, to set the rules of the road up front for so-called gatekeeper platforms. The goal is to prevent anti-competitive behaviour before it even happens, creating a fairer playing field from the start. The old chief, Margrethe Vestager, once suggested the ultimate punishment, forcing Google to sell off parts of its Adtech business. That breakup order is now reportedly off the table. To understand the significance of this, you have to know that a breakup order is the nuclear option in antitrust. It would have forced Google to divest or sell off parts of its ad business. Critics argue Google's power comes from owning every step of the ad buying process, the publisher's ad server, the advertiser's tools, and the auction house in the middle. This integration allegedly allows them to give their own services an unfair advantage. Taking that option off the table is a massive concession. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play. It turns out the EU might be holding back for a strategic reason. A US judge has set a trial date for this September to decide on potential remedies for Google's dominance in the exact same ad tech space. Interestingly enough, this hints at a new era of global antitrust cooperation, or what you might call transatlantic deference. The EU might be strategically letting the US Department of Justice, which has already won a ruling that Google illegally monopolized the ad market, handle the politically difficult task of forcing a potential breakup. Europe could get the market changes it wants without having to fire the first shot. This all begs the question, is the EU backing down, or is this a calculated move in a global chess match over who gets to regulate big tech? And with Google's ad business making up over 75% of its total revenue, what happens when the world's most feared regulator suddenly changes the rules of the game? The fallout from this decision extends far beyond corporate boardrooms. The groups who initially filed these complaints are online publishers and media outlets. Research from the US Department of Justice case showed that because of all the intermediaries, publishers often see only 30 to 40 cents of every dollar an advertiser spends. When their revenue is squeezed, it directly impacts their ability to fund journalism and create the diverse content we all rely on. So the outcome of this global chess match doesn't just affect Google's bottom line, it affects the health of our entire information ecosystem. From a global chess match over market dominance, we now turn to a high-stakes legal battle over responsibility in the age of AI. A jury ordered Tesla to pay nearly $250 million in a fatal Autopilot crash case. But now the company is fighting to slash that verdict by over 90%. The case centers on a 2019 crash in Florida. A driver using Tesla's enhanced Autopilot dropped his phone, and while scrambling to pick it up, his Model S accelerated through an intersection. The collision killed a 22-year-old woman and severely injured her boyfriend. The driver later said he believed Autopilot would brake if an obstacle was in the way. And that belief, well, it's at the very heart of this debate. The term Autopilot itself has been heavily scrutinised. Safety advocates and even regulators argue that names like Autopilot and full self-driving can create a false sense of security, leading drivers to overestimate what the car can actually do. This is a concept called foreseeable misuse, where a company could be held responsible if its marketing encourages user complacency. In fact, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has directly challenged Tesla over its branding, pointing to a critical safety gap between what the system can do and what drivers think it can do. A Miami jury found this was a case of shared responsibility, ordering Tesla to pay a staggering $242.5 million. But Tesla has now filed an appeal to have the verdict tossed out, or at the very least, dramatically reduced to just $23 million. And the core of their argument is an absolute bombshell. Tesla's lawyers claim the vehicle had no design defects and that the crash was caused entirely by the driver. Their legal filing states holding Tesla liable for providing drivers with advanced safety features just because a reckless driver overrode them cannot be reconciled with Florida law. Behind that legal language, Tesla is essentially making two powerful arguments. First, they are pushing the driver into what researchers call the moral crumple zone. Think of it like a car's physical crumple zone, which is designed to absorb impact in a crash. In this case, the human driver is positioned to absorb all the blame for any system limitations or failures. Studies show that people tend to blame human operators in accidents with semi-autonomous cars, even when the automation plays a major role. The driver becomes a scapegoat for the technology's shortcomings. Second, Tesla is using a utilitarian defense. They are arguing that the overall benefit of Autopilot to countless drivers potentially preventing accidents caused by human error outweighs the tragic risk posed by a few reckless users. This raises a huge ethical question that society is still grappling with. What is an acceptable casualty rate for a new technology that promises to be safer in the long run? The plaintiff's lead counsel fired back, saying the verdict isn't an indictment of the autonomous vehicle industry, but of Tesla's reckless and unsafe development and deployment of its Autopilot system. This isn't just about one tragic accident. It's a high-stakes legal battle over the fundamental question of responsibility in the age of advanced driver assistance. The jury said responsibility was shared, but Tesla is arguing for zero. The outcome could redefine who is ultimately in control when you are behind the wheel, you or the car. The outcome here will have ripple effects far beyond Tesla, setting a precedent for all software-defined products. Think about it. How do you assign liability for a product whose behavior can be changed at any moment through an over-the-air software update long after you bought it? The law is racing to catch up. The European Union, for example, just expanded its product liability rules to explicitly include software and AI systems, holding manufacturers responsible for defects that arise from updates. This case is forcing us to decide who pays the price when the ghost in the machine makes a fatal mistake. Tesla's legal troubles are deeply tied to its valuation. Speaking of which, another major tech player just had a brutal day on Wall Street, even after posting record-breaking numbers. An AI chip maker saw its stock absolutely crater, plummeting 18% in a single day. The most unexpected part, this happened right after the company, Marvell Technology, announced a record-breaking quarter. Revenue didn't just grow, it exploded by 58% from a year ago, fueled by what their CEO called strong AI demand. The company swung from a nearly $200 million loss last year to a nearly $200 million profit this year. So what does this strong AI demand actually mean for a company like Marvell? They are a key player in the world of custom AI chips, also known as ASICs. These aren't the general purpose GPUs that NVIDIA famously sells to everyone. Instead, these are bespoke, tailor-made chips designed for a single massive customer like Amazon or Google for their specific data center needs. This is a huge growing business. So why the bloodbath on Wall Street? It all came down to one number. Here's where it gets interesting. We are in the middle of what some are calling an AI expectation bubble. The hype is so intense that simply posting incredible growth isn't enough. Wall Street has priced these stocks for absolute perfection, and any sign that a company might not be the next Nvidia is met with panic. We've even seen shares of giants like Dell and Nvidia itself dip after strong earnings just because the outlook wasn't even more astronomical. Their all-important data center sales, the engine of their AI business, reached $1.49 billion. That sounds huge, but it fell just short of Wall Street's projected $1.51 billion, a tiny miss that triggered a massive overreaction. But that's not the whole picture. The company's forecast for the next quarter also came in slightly below what analysts were expecting. The CEO tried to calm nerves, attributing the outlook to the lumpiness of building out massive AI infrastructure and promising a substantially stronger fourth quarter. So the thing is, that word lumpiness is the key to this whole story. What it reveals is that because Marvell makes custom chips for just a few giant clients, their revenue is completely tied to those clients' secret multi-billion-dollar build-out schedules. If one of those giants decides to delay a project by a single quarter, Marvell's revenue can suddenly look weak, even if the long-term demand is still massive. It's not a steady, predictable flow. It's a lumpy, volatile ride. But investors weren't buying it. Believe it or not, this lumpiness exposes a massive risk. When your entire business model depends on a few hyperscale customers like Amazon and Microsoft, you give them enormous power. Their build-out plans are famously opaque, and a single decision made in a boardroom in Seattle can vaporize billions from your market cap overnight. This extreme customer concentration is a systemic risk that makes investors very, very nervous. One analyst firm, Cantor, put out a note saying they find it very difficult to believe the company can hit its future market share targets. Then came the knockout punch. Bank of America downgraded Marvell's stock from buy to neutral, slashing their price target and citing concerns about the company's AI growth prospects. All of this is unfolding because the battle for the AI chip market is absolutely brutal. With Nvidia holding a dominant, near-monopolistic position, companies like Marvell, Broadcom, and AMD are in a knife fight for the number 2 spot. Marvell is betting on custom chips, but Broadcom is also a huge player in that space, and AMD is coming hard with its own powerful GPUs. In this environment, any sign of weakness can be seen as a fatal flaw. This all begs the question, in the white-hot AI gold rush, is record-breaking growth and a massive swing to profitability no longer good enough? For Marvell Technology, the market's answer was a painful 18% drop. The AI chip market is white-hot, and one of the biggest names driving that demand is, of course, Elon Musk. But his latest headline isn't about AI. It's about a massive lawsuit from the SEC. The story begins with a decision that could cost him a staggering $150 million. The US government is accusing Musk of a move that saved him that exact amount, all at the expense of unsuspecting investors. So how do they even get to a number like $150 million? It comes down to a regulatory method called an event study. They look at Twitter's stock price during the time Musk was buying shares secretly and compare it to how the stock should have behaved based on market trends. The difference is the amount of money investors lost by selling their shares too cheaply without knowing a massive buyer was in the market. That's the money the SEC says Musk saved at their expense. The Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, is suing the tech entrepreneur, alleging that back in 2022, he waited 11 days too long to disclose that he was buying up a massive stake in Twitter. The agency says that delay let him secretly buy more shares at a lower price before the market knew what was happening. Now, they want him to pay back every dollar of that $150 million, plus a fine. Now, get this. Under securities law, that 11-day delay is often treated as a strict liability offense. This means the SEC's position is that it doesn't matter if the delay was accidental or intentional. The rule is the rule because it's designed to keep the markets fair for everyone. In fact, the SEC recently made this rule even stricter, shortening the 10-day window to just 5 business days, signaling that they see timely disclosure as absolutely critical. But Musk is firing back hard. In a new court filing, he's asking a judge to throw the entire case out, calling it a waste of this court's time and taxpayer resources. He claims the delay was completely inadvertent and that this lawsuit is nothing more than selective enforcement by a government agency trying to punish him for his public criticism. This claim of selective enforcement is the core of Musk's defense. He's essentially turning a legal fight into a public relations war, arguing the agency is retaliating against him for being a vocal critic. This strategy forces the SEC to not only fight in court, but also in the court of public opinion, where Musk has a massive platform. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. Musk's team is pointing out that in similar cases, the SEC has sought penalties around $100,000. They argue that demanding $150 million is an excessive fine that violates the US Constitution. Now, Musk's team has a point, but there's a huge catch. Research into past SEC enforcement actions shows that fines for individuals in similar late filing cases do typically range from $10,000 to around $200,000. But here's what makes this case so different and why the SEC is asking for so much more. The agency alleges that Musk's delay allowed him to acquire shares at a suppressed price on a scale never seen before in these types of cases. They argue the penalty should match the unprecedented size of the alleged profit. This is the latest battle in a long-running war between Musk and the powerful financial regulator. The SEC's position is blunt. They say Musk's intent doesn't matter and he should be liable for violating important public reporting laws. This all boils down to one massive question. Was this a simple accidental oversight or a calculated move that netted one of the world's richest people a 9-figure payday?
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.